A shaft of moonlight slices through a shattered stained glass window, casting fractured colors onto the cold flagstones of the abandoned abbey. Silence hangs heavy in the air, broken only by the distant drip of water echoing through vaulted arches. You step carefully, every breath stirring motes of dust that dance like ghosts in the pale beam. Ahead, a single rose petal lies on the floor, improbably fresh, as if fallen from a live bloom, and you know you've crossed into a place where time itself has fractured. Your fingers brush against a carved relief, a rose entwined with a bee, its petals etched in stone centuries ago. The pattern hums beneath your touch, a vibration that thrums through your bones. You realize you are standing above a secret, one whispered through ages, hunted by holy men and kings alike. They called it heresy, the claim that the Merovingian line, those long-haired kings of old Gaul, carried divine blood. Tonight their code murmurs again. A distant chant drifts down a dim corridor, half heard and half forgotten. You follow the sound, each step turning the hush into a pulse in your chest. On a low altar rests a scroll bound in crimson ribbon, its seal stamped with a chalice entwined by a serpent. The parchment's surface shimmers with faded ink. The Merovingian Codex, its legends soaked in rose oil and cloaked in blood. Your breath catches. Any who dared touch it were said to vanish into history's shadows or be burned as heretics. Above the scroll, a candle flickers on a wrought iron sconce. You lift the codex, and the candle flares, as if recognizing its true air. You unseal the ribbon and break the wax. The room shudders. Stone reliefs along the walls brighten, revealing faces erased from every chronicle. Merovec the founder, Clotaire the exiled, Brunhilde the loyal. Beneath each name, a thin scar of red ink marks betrayal and bloodshed. The chamber's hush deepens. Then a hidden door groans open in the wall. A spiral staircase descends into blackness, its handrail worn smooth by pilgrims and traders. You grip the codex to your chest, candle in one hand, and step onto the first stone. Behind you, the door slams shut, sealing out the world above. As you descend, the walls close in with ancient carvings, bees alighting on chalices, roses dripping like tears, ravens perched on hollowed skulls. A whisper beckons from the darkness. Sanguis non moritur. Blood does not die. You keep moving, heart hammering, until the staircase spills into a subterranean hall lit by a single shaft of moonlight from a grate overhead. At its center stands an obelisk of black granite, crowned by a sculpted bee frozen mid-flight. At the obelisk's base, three relics wait: a slender vial of dark resin, the lock of Merovec, a silver comb tangled with red silk, Queen Brunhilde's token, and an iron-bound book etched with names that must never return to light, the Codex of Veiled Names. You approach, fingers trembling. The candle's flame wavers, and a low hum, or is it a chant, rises around you. A sudden rush of air extinguishes the candle. In the pitch dark, you hear a soft footfall behind you. A hooded figure steps into the moonlight, staff in hand, eyes glowing. He bows once. Heir of the honeyed blood, he intones, voice a whisper and a roar. To claim the legacy, you must vow your life to its protection. Bear these tokens through 3 trials of blood, faith, and truth. Only then will the path forward reveal itself. You lift the vial to your lips and feel its warmth seep into your veins. You draw the comb from its silk snare, garnets glinting like captured dawn. You open the codex to its first page, where your name, your true name, was never written. Setting each relic upon the obelisk, you steel your heart. A hidden seam parts in the stone, revealing a narrow passage deeper into the earth. Lightning flashes through the grate above, illuminating rose and bee reliefs that now glow with life. The staircase beckons, and you step forward, sealing the chamber behind you. With every footfall, history stirs. The Merovingian code whispers your name on the wind. Your journey begins now, and the world above will never be the same. You emerge from the granite hall into a long, narrow corridor carved from living rock. Moonlight filters through fissures above, painting silver veins across walls etched with symbols of rose petals falling onto beehives. Each carving pulses faintly, as though remembering the touch of every guardian who walked here before. You press your palm to one glyph, a single rose dripping honey, and feel a soft warmth spread through your fingertips. Ahead, a low arch marks the entrance to a vast underground chamber. Torches set in iron sconces flare to life as you pass, one by one, as if guided by an unseen hand. The air grows thick with the scent of roses and beeswax. At the room's center stands a stone dais, its surface carved into a map of ancient Gaul, rivers of silver, hills of sapphire, and three crimson dots glowing over Ardennes, Loire, and Provence. Beneath the map, an inscription in Old Frankish warns, "Follow the petals of the lost queen where her tears found sanctuary." You step closer and realize the dots mark the resting places of three Merovingian relics. Your heart hammers. If the comb and codex lie at Ardennes, the lock of Merovec must be in the Loire. And the third token, a crucible said to hold Queen Brunhilde's last tear, rests in Provence. The path you began at the abbey splits into three trials of blood and faith. A whisper drifts across the chamber. Choose your first trial. Looking back, the dark corridor has sealed shut. No turning back. You place your hand on the Ardennes dot. Immediately the dais tilts, sliding down to reveal a narrow passage sloping upward. Instinctively, you know this leads to a ruined watchtower deep in the Ardennes forest, where the Combs burial crypt awaits. Torch in hand, you ascend, the map's glow fading behind you. Water drips from overhead roots, the sound echoing like distant drums. The scent of pine and damp earth grows stronger, mingling with the lingering aroma of rose. You break through to an iron trap door beside a moss-covered tree root. Above, the night sky is veiled by ancient branches. Below, the cavern you left glows faintly through rusty grates. Stepping through, you find yourself on a mossy forest floor. Twilight's blue light filters through dense pines, illuminating the crumbling stones of a watchtower once manned by royal guards. Ivy chokes the archway. Inside, the air is cold. The Combs whisper beckons you deeper, down a spiral staircase overgrown with roots. At its base, a sealed sarcophagus bears the Merovingian crest, a rose encircled by bees. The lid is bound by three iron clamps, each engraved with a word: blood, betrayal, redemption. You touch the first clamp, whispering your vow. By rose and bee, claim the lineage's mercy. It clicks open. A second snap as you vow to uphold truth, and the third yields only when you swear not to let heritage become tyranny. With a deep breath, you lift the stone lid. Inside lies the silver comb, its garnets dulled by centuries but still warm to your touch. You grasp it, and instantly the forest lights shift. Faint, luminescent roses bloom along the walls, revealing a hidden niche with an iron rod pointed at a painted image. Queen Brunhilde, weeping beside a chalice, beneath it a riddle in Old Frankish, shed tears of blood to free the lost. You realize what must be done. You withdraw the lock of Merovec from your satchel, its dark resin glinting. Touching the comb's teeth to the lock's neck, you offer a drop of blood from a small cut at your fingertip. The two relics glow together, and a hidden panel in the watchtower's wall grinds open, spilling golden light. Within lies Queen Brunhilde's tear crucible, a tiny crystal flask etched with her final prayer. Mercy for my line, forgiveness for my kin. Raising the three relics, comb, lock, and crucible, you feel their power converge. The forest around you hums with life. Branches stir though no wind blows, and fireflies gather at your feet in patterns of rose petals. The path back to the abbey shimmers in moonlit ribbons, guiding you onward. Heart pounding with triumph and anticipation, you turn toward the next trial. The Loire's depths where Merovec's lock must be reunited with its twin seal. Above, the ancient watchtower crumbles silently as you step onto the moonlit path. Relics secured, vow renewed. Your journey continues, and the Merovingian bloodline stirs in the shadows, waiting for its heir to finish what was begun centuries ago. Moonlight still clung to your cloak when you stumbled into the cavern's far alcove, heart pounding from the trial's threshold. Here, the air turned cooler, heavy with the scent of damp stone and ancient ink. Your fingers brushed against a narrow ledge carved into the wall, so thin it was almost invisible. As your hand passed, you felt the edge of something slim, a rolled scroll bound in withered leather. You drew it free and unlatched the brittle tie. The parchment unfurled with a soft crack, revealing a map unlike any you'd ever seen. Rivers were drawn in silver mountain ranges in jagged strokes of charcoal, and villages as tiny red blooms. But what set your pulse racing were the three symbols painted in deep crimson: a falling rose petal, a bee in mid-flight, and, in the map's center, a chalice cracked down its side. Beneath it, a single line of script arched in Old Frankish: where tear and token converge, the path to truth awakens. You pressed a knuckle to the chalice symbol and felt a tremor ripple through the stone underfoot. It was as though the map itself recognized your touch and began to pulse, faintly at first, then stronger, sending a warmth up your wrist. Torchlight caught the silver river leading westward toward forested highlands that matched the Ardennes, southward toward the Loire's deep gorges, and east toward lavender fields of Provence. It was the blueprint for your quest. 3 sites, 3 relics, 3 trials. Pocketing the map, you stepped back. The chamber's walls, once dark and unadorned, now glowed with faint carvings, petals drifting onto honeycombs, broken chalices mended by golden seams. Everywhere you looked, the rose and bee motif reappeared, overt or hidden, as though the very stone had been waiting to reveal its secrets to you alone. A sudden draft stirred the torch you carried. Its flame bent and quivered, casting dancing shadows that coalesced into a shape at the chamber's entrance. A lone knight in charcoal armor, visor lifted. His eyes were bright with curiosity but guarded. "You have found the map of Cibilis," he said, voice low and resonant. "Few know it still exists." He stepped forward and knelt, lowering his sword tip to the ground. "I am Sir Everard, last of the Templar contingent, sworn to protect these halls. I have watched your passage, and tonight the map has chosen its heir." You frowned. "Why me? I'm no knight of old orders." He smiled, half-shadowed. "Orders rise and fall. Bloodlines endure." He leaned in, voice dropping. "The map is more than guidance. It is a living record, keyed to our blood. It will lead you to the first sight and protect you as long as your heart remains true." He slid the map into your cloak. "Follow it north. At the Fallen Rose Tower, beneath roots of the heartwood oak, you will discover the Combs' resting place. But beware traps laid by Valmont's agents. They seek the same relics to claim power, not restore it." You swallowed hard, the weight of the map's crimson crest pressing a charge of destiny into your palm. "And the other 2? Sir Everard stood, placing a gauntleted hand on your shoulder. "Each site holds its own gatekeeper, a sentinel or a trial. The Loch of Merivec lies where water runs black in the Druid's Gorge. Brunehilda's tear crucible awaits in a sunken crypt beneath the Provençal chapel of St. Cassia. But you cannot hunt them all at once. Begin with the Fallen Rose." He stepped back, sheath rattling, and turned, his cape a wave of midnight. "I will remain to guard this chamber until the map's next shift calls me elsewhere." He lifted his visor fully, revealing a face worn by secret vows and hard winters. "Go quickly. Night wanes." As Sir Everard's torchlight receded down the corridor, you stood alone with the map's glow at your chest. Beyond the alcove, the spiral stair you had descended now rose into deeper shadows. No clear path forward. You realized then that your quest would not follow a straight line, but a braided journey of blood and faith. Slipping the parchment into your pack, you retraced your steps through the glowing carvings. Each petal and bee seemed to whisper encouragement. "Courage, heir." The hidden stair opened onto the collapsing abbey above just as the moon sank. Fresh wind carried the scent of pine and distant bloom. With dawn still hours away, you set northward through the forest's hush, guided by the map's living pulse. Somewhere beneath the gnarled branches lay the Fallen Rose Tower, and within its ruined vault, the first relic waited. You did not know what trial you would face. Words long silenced, riddles of blood, perhaps even faces of allies turned foes. But now you held the map of Cibilis, and its crimson chalice burned with promise. The path forward, the bloodline's revival, the legacy unfolding with each step you dared to take. You push through a veil of brambles as dawn's pale light bleeds into the forest. The air is thick with dew and the scent of wild roses. The map of Cibilis trembles against your heart, its chalice emblem glowing faintly. Ahead, amidst moss-clad stones, stands the Fallen Rose Tower, once a sentinel over these woods, now a crumbling stump of granite crowned by twisted vines. Your boots press into soft earth littered with petals, some fresh, others blackened by time. Every petal seems to point you onward, tracing a path through thorny undergrowth toward a massive oak whose roots burst through cracked masonry. This is the Heartwood Oak, and beneath its gnarled roots lies your first trial. Queen Brunehilda's silver comb, buried for a millennium. You kneel before the oak's great trunk, map in left hand, torch in right. The map's silver river now aligns perfectly with a knot in the roots. There, a small cavity, just large enough for a hand. You unsheathe a small dagger, clear away damp soil, and slip your fingers into the hollow. Something cold and metal presses against your palm. A silver clasp, petal-shaped and dulled by earth. You draw out a carved box, heavy oak bound in iron filigree. Its lid is etched with a single rose split down the middle by a bee's flight path. With reverent care, you lift the lid. Inside rests the comb of Queen Brunehilda, its silver teeth intact, garnets dull but pulsating. As your fingers close around the handle, a soft sob drifts through the morning air, as though centuries of Brunehilda's sorrow have seeped into these roots. The ground rumbles. Petals swirl at your feet in a gentle vortex. The oak's bark cracks, revealing three carved faces, a queen weeping, a knight bowed, a monk praying. Their mouths move in silent chant. You realize the trial requires action, not just discovery. The comb is key, but first you must earn Brunehilda's blessing. You raise the comb to your lips and speak her ancient prayer. Words learned from the Codex of Veiled Names. By tears of blood and mercy's grace, I honor your legacy and claim this place. Let sorrow yield to hope anew. And in this gift, all hurt is through. A warm pulse radiates from the comb into your palm, spreading through your arm and into the forest itself. The rumbling ceases, the carved faces soften, the queen's tears dry, the knight straightens, the monk opens his eyes in quiet benediction. A final petal drifts down, landing on the comb's handle. You bow your head, the trial is fulfilled. But before you can rise, a scream echoes from the tower above. A woman's cry, raw and urgent. Hard hammering, you tuck the comb into your satchel and sprint toward the fallen rose tower's base. Vines cling to your cloak as you scale a slick wall of stone. A low window, jagged shards of glass crown its frame, beckons. You wriggle through, torch held high, into a circular chamber ringed with collapsed benches and shattered stained glass. In the center, a young acolyte lies bound to a stone altar, eyes wide with terror. Soot dusts her robes, her wrists bleed where ropes have cut. Above her, a figure in Valmont livery stands, dagger raised, a mocking smile beneath his helm. Fancy meeting the heir here, he hisses. Queen's comb will be lost with your prize. Your gloved fist slams into his elbow, and he staggers back. You draw your dagger, simple iron, honed to a deadly edge. The Valmont agent snarls, lunges. In the flickering torchlight, you parry his blows, steel ringing in the hush. Behind him, the acolyte whispers a prayer, clutching her locket, a small silver bee. With one deft twist, you disarm him, sending the dagger clattering across broken stone. He lunges to reclaim it. You sidestep, sweep his legs, and send him crashing to the floor. Gasping, he scrambles away, then bolts through a ruined arch. You free the acolyte's hands and cut her bonds. She presses the locket into your palm. This is the bee sigil, heir, she says, voice trembling. Only those true of heart can wield it. You have passed the trial of sorrow. Now the trial of steel. The comb is yours, but the path ahead grows darker. You tuck the acolyte's sigil around your neck. Outside, the forest waits, petals rustling in approval. The fallen rose tower's collapse begins, stones shifting as if the chamber itself breathes a sigh of release. You escape through the low window just as the tower shudders. Torch aloft, you emerge to find the acolyte kneeling among fresh rose petals. I will guide you to the Druid's Gorge, she says. There, the Loch of Merovec lies beneath obsidian waves. But beware, the water's guardians test every spark of lineage. You nod, helping her to her feet. The fallen rose tower falls silent behind you, its purpose fulfilled. In your satchel, Brunehilda's comb rests safe, its blessing echoing through your veins. Around your neck, the bee sigil pulses like a heart. Ahead, the forest path forks toward distant cliffs where dark waters swirl. The second trial awaits, and your quest for the Merovingian legacy presses on under a waking sun. A silver mist clung to the creek as you and the rescued acolyte, named Esta, made your way northward. The forest thinned into stony meadows, and the air turned crisp with salt as you neared the gorge. Legends spoke of an ancient druidic rite performed where the river ran darkest, its waters stained by iron-rich springs. There, beneath swirling currents, lay the Loch of Merivec, forged at the line's birth and sealed in legend. The map of Sibyllus guided your steps. Its silver river now pulsed on the parchment toward a narrow chasm flanked by craggy walls. Esta's bee sigil lay warm against your chest, its glow matching the comb's pulse and lighting a path through twilight's gloom. You climbed a steep ledge, narrow as a finger, and paused atop a boulder to survey the gorge below. Jagged stone gates, rushing water that sparkled black in moonlight, and an iron grate wedged into the riverbank like a gauntlet awaiting an heir's grasp. A low chant drifted up from the water, a druid's blessing or a warning. Esta pressed close, voice steady. They say only those of true lineage can open the river gate. You must speak the old words. You descended toward the iron grate, vertical bars etched with spirals, vines, and 3 tiny roses. Between the bars, swirling eddies tugged at broken planks. You pressed your palm to the cold metal, then closed your eyes and whispered, "By blood of oak and river's flow, by secret vow I claim this glow. Let iron yield to air's right hand. Reveal the key to this lost land." The engravings along the bars glowed silver. A hidden mechanism clicked deep within the rock, and the grate shuddered open, swinging inward to reveal a submerged tunnel drowning in moonlit spray. Down its slope, the water churned over slick stones. Esta held your torch high. Its flame flickered defiantly against the dark. Steeling yourself, you stepped into the torrent. The cold bit at your legs as the current shoved you forward. Each foot found hold on mossy steps carved long ago by hands now dust. As you progressed, the tunnel grew narrower, forcing you to lean low. The roar of the river echoed, a living beast. At the far end, the passage opened into a cavern lit by phosphorescent lichen that painted the walls in ghostly blue. At the cavern's center, on a pedestal of twisted roots, lay the Loch of Merivec, a vial of resin so dark it devoured light, sealed with iron bands in a tarnished bee clasp. Beneath the pedestal, the water pooled like ink. No sooner had you set foot on the raised bank than ripples fanned outward, and from the black pool emerged a figure carved from river rock and ivy, its eyes glowing amber. A guardian spirit, bound to the loch and sworn to its protection. Its voice resonated like distant thunder. Who claims the blood of Merivec must first prove their worth. Esta gripped your arm. "Speak truly," she whispered. You stepped forward, standing toe-to-toe with the guardian. Torchlight trembled across his rocky hide. "I am heir by vow and birthright. I seek only to unite the line, to end centuries of exile and bloodshed." The spirit cocked its head, water dripping from mossy shoulders. "Words can mask ambition. Show me your truth." It raised a hand and the pool's surface rippled to reveal an image, a child's cry, a mother's tear, a throne blood-soaked. It was your lineage laid bare. You closed your eyes, recalling every trial past, every vow spoken in candlelit halls and moonlit forests. "I carry Brunahilda's comb, her mercy. I bear Sibyllus's map, her guidance. I wear the bee sigil, her loyalty. My blood stands open. Judge me by the life I protect, not by the power I claim." The spirit studied you in silence. Then it knelt, in river-stone hands unclasped the loch from its roots. The vial rose, pulsing with dark light. As it floated toward you, the cavern walls sighed, and lichen flared briefly, illuminating entire hieroglyphs of Merovingian history, lost queens, hidden heirs, suppressed rights. You caught the loch, its resin warm against your palm. The guardian's form dissolved into a cascade of droplets that vanished into the pool. The grate behind you groaned as it swung shut, sealing off the tunnel once more. Outside, Esta exhaled. "You have proven your truth," she said softly. "With the loch claimed, 2 tokens now rest in your hands. 1 trial remains in Provence. But be warned, the power of the tear crucible will test not only your lineage, but your faith. You wipe dripping water from the lock's surface, slipping it into your satchel beside Brunhilde's comb and the map of Sibyllis. Above the gorge, stars wove patterns you recognize from the codex. The final path lay eastward, where lavender fields and sun-bleached chapels concealed the last relic and the greatest trial of all. As you and Esta climbed back toward moonlit forests, the lock's dark glow pulsed in rhythm with your heart. The Merovingian code had revealed its second secret and would demand more of you before dawn's light. Mist-swept hills gave way to lavender fields under a bruised dawn as you and Esta rode eastward, the lock of Merivex secured in your satchel alongside Brunhilde's comb and the map of Sibyllis. The final crimson dot on the map pulsed ahead, marking the sunken chapel of St. Cassia, where Queen Brunhilde's tear crucible was said to lie beneath flooded crypts, and where your ultimate trial would test faith itself. By midday, the chapel's mossy apse broke the horizon. Once painted a riot of blues and golds, its stone facade was now worn and fungal, sealed by centuries of silt and silence. A bell tower leaned at a dangerous angle, its cluster of bells long since stripped. Esta's bee sigil glimmered against her breast as she pointed to a small, lead-shut entrance at ground level. Rose vines snaked around its keystone, petals curling over a carved chalice now almost erased. You pressed the map of Sibyllis against the wall. Its chalice symbol flared gold, St. Cassia's marker. Hands shook as you traced a carving of a teardrop and whispered the old words of opening. By fallen tear and shattered vow, I claim this sacred relic now. Let barred stone yield to kin's right, and light reclaim this crypt of night. A deep rumble shook the chapel. Stone shifted as hidden gears ground. The vine-laced lintel lifted just enough for you to slip inside. Esta lit a torch, its flame dancing across frescoes of Magdalene figures now ghostly in decay. The air smelled of damp earth and aged incense. Ahead, a stone staircase spiraled down. Water lapped at its first step. Each descent echoed with dripping cadences, like the quiet pulse of tears long shed. At the staircase's base, a low arch opened into a vast crypt flooded by dark water. Lit by phosphorescent mold, the chamber's walls gleamed with ancient mosaics. Swimmers crossing shadowed seas, women with vessels raised to the moon, kings kneeling before chalices. In the crypt's center floated a stone dais just above the waterline. Upon it rested a delicate crystal flask, Queen Brunhilde's tear crucible, its glass iridescent with trapped sorrow. Two carved griffins flanked the flask, their stone claws poised to protect. Water rippled as unseen currents circled the dais like sentries. Esta's voice trembled. They say the crucible demands a sacrifice, not of life but of pride. To claim it, the air must bear witness to a judgment more painful than exile. Torchlight glinted off the griffin's eyes. You waded into the water. Or, ice cold, biting through boots and cloak. Each step toward the dais felt like crossing a threshold between life and legend. Finally, you stood before the crucible, its stopper sealed with rose gold wax. You reached out, but the water roared, and two stone faces formed in the griffin's breastplates, gazing at you with silent accusation. A disembodied whisper filled the chamber. What have you lost? What will you exchange to free this grief? Your mind raced. Exile, betrayal, silence, prayers left unsung. And then you saw Esta's face, resolute, tears glinting in her eyes as she offered her locket, the bee sigil. I stand with you, she called softly, but this trial is yours alone. You swallowed pride and sorrow in one breath. From your satchel you drew Brunhilde's comb, its silver tarnished, its garnets dull. Placing it atop the dais, you spoke the final vow. By mercy over might, by lineage and love, I lay down what I cherish to rise anew. Queen Brunhilde's sorrow I transform. May hope flow where tears once burned. The comb's garnets flared crimson. The water's surface glowed. A slow crack rippled through the crucible's stopper. You felt a tug at your sleeve. Esta raised the bee sigil high, its glow weaving into the comb's crimson light. Together, hope and loyalty pulsed in unison. With a whisper, you twisted the stopper free, and the glass flask sang with release. A single tear-shaped droplet, pure and glowing, drifted into the air. The water stilled, The Griffin's stone eyes softened, their faces relaxing into solemn relief. Grasping the Terra Crucible, you felt its warmth seep through your fingers. The mosaics above shimmered and faded, the crypt's gloom lifting as shafts of moonlight filtered through hidden grates. Above, the chapel bell tolls, once silent, now awakened by the trial's end. Esta waited to your side. All three tokens are yours, she breathed. You held the comb, the lock, and now the Terra Crucible. Three relics of lineage, mercy, and truth. The map of Sibyllus pulsed one final time, its chalice glowing white before fading to stillness. As you climbed the staircase, relics secure the crypt whispered farewell. Outside, lavender fields swayed under a rising moon. The final trial was complete. Dawn's first light would find you not as seeker, but as heir of the honeyed blood, bearer of Merovingian grace and Gnostic truths. Ahead, the hidden stair awaited, leading back to the Abbey and the Council of Sanctified Blood. There, all tokens would unite to renew the covenant of Rose, Bee, and Chalice, and the bloodline's legacy would be sealed for generations to come. Mist-swept lavender still clung to the air as you emerged from St. Cassia's crypt. Relics in hand, Brunahilda's comb, the lock of Merovech, and the Terra Crucible. Esta led you through moonlit fields toward the concealed stair entrance beneath the Abbey's foundations. Each step rattled with anticipation. Dawn would soon break on the Council of Sanctified Blood, where lineage and faith would merge forever. Inside Ravensshore, torches cast long shadows across the cloister. Brother Alaric and Sister Marceline awaited your return at the Marker of Seven, the black granite obelisk carved with rose and bee glyphs. Around them the council, clad in scarlet robes and silver chalice emblems, hushed the morning breeze. Even Sister Helvig, once your fiercest challenger, stood quietly, face unreadable. You placed the relics in precise order on the obelisk's base, the comb's silver teeth toward the east, the lock clasped at the north, and the Terra Crucible to the west. As each token met stone, its power pulsed outward, the comb's mercy, the lock's resolve, the crucible's sorrow weaving together in dawn's muted light. Marceline stepped forward, voice echoing in the stillness. Heirs of blood and bearers of mercy, today we bind church and crown in unity. Speak the oath of 5 tokens. By comb, lock, tear, rose, and bee to seal our covenant. The council chimed in unison. By mercy of the comb, by strength of the lock, by sorrow's release in the crucible's rock, by petals that fall and honey that flows, by faith and by blood our unity grows. At these words, the obelisk's carvings blossomed. Stone roses unfurled, bees took flight in relief, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing the seal of Ethelred, a silver disc bearing entwined rose, bee, and chalice. You lifted the seal and pressed it to the charter of sovereignty Marceline held, embossing the parchment in living metal. A sudden tremor rattled the cloister. From the archivist's wing, a crash echoed. Sister Helvig's dissenting voice rang out. This power is too great to share with the church. She burst into the circle, eyes ablaze. You've handed them half our lineage's magic. Alaric stepped forward, dagger in hand. Helvig, your trial has passed. Now choose unity or exile. Helvig's gaze flicked to the relics, then to the assembled clans and clergy. A single tear fell from her eye, glinting in torchlight. She bowed deeply. By the sorrow I once denied, I pledge my faith to this covenant. With shaking hands, she added her sigil to the charter. The tremor ceased. Outside, the abbey bells broke into pealing, rejoicing. You felt the words resonating. The bloodline, once fractured by betrayal and fear, now stood whole, its heirs bound by oath, relic, and purpose. As dawn crimsoned the sky, Chieftain Morcant raised his axe in salute, while Abbot Verratti blessed the relics in holy water. Even the vaults beneath the abbey seemed to sigh in release, as though centuries of silence and secrecy had finally found peace. You placed the Terra Crucible in the sacred reliquary beside the other tokens and stepped back. The council formed a circle, hands joined across divides of nobility and piety, Clotair's descendants and Merovech's heirs united at last. Marceline smiled through tears. Rise, heirs of the honeyed blood. Go forth bearing this legacy with wisdom and mercy. You felt the weight of history lighten, no longer a solitary seeker, but a steward of living tradition. And as sunlight flooded the cloister, you knew the Merovingian line would endure. its story reborn in Rose, Bee, and Chalice for all time. Mist-spun sunlight streamed through the newly repaired stained glass of Ravenshore's Great Hall as the council dispersed, relics safely stowed in the reliquary beneath the altar. For a heartbeat, peace reigned. Then a sharp cry broke the calm, Sister Marceline's voice, urgent and alarmed. You and Esther raced down the cloister to find Marceline and Brother Alaric standing over an overturned archivist's chest. Scattered among priceless scrolls lay a single scrap of parchment bearing the Raven and Rose seal of House Valmont, and half a sentence scrawled in haste. The bloodline's power will burn the Curia's lies. Meet me at... The message ended in black ink blot. Two names echoed in your mind, Valmont, once humbled at Treville, and the Inquisitor of the Black Quill, once penitent but never forgiven. Someone had stolen into the Abbey's inner sanctum and dared to call the Merovingian lineage into rebellion against the Church's council. Brother Alaric's hand tightened on his dagger. They seek to fracture our unity before it settles. We must act swiftly. A secret alliance. You summoned Chieftain Morcant and the newly appointed Guardian of Inquiry, the former Inquisitor, into the cellars beneath the chapter house. Flickering torchlight revealed an uneasy gathering of warrior, priest, and penitent Inquisitor. The scrap of parchment lay on an iron table between you. I propose we form a secret alliance with Sanctus Veritas, you said. If we share this evidence, we can expose any conspirators within the Curia and protect our covenant. Abbot Verati's former deputy, now Guardian of Inquiry, cleared his throat. I will petition the Curia's inner circle for an audience, but we must move carefully. Any false step, and the entire council could be declared heretical. Morcant's axe gleamed. Then we ride at dusk to the Abbey of St. Lys, where the Curia's emissaries rest. We'll deliver proof of this plot ourselves. The journey at dusk. As twilight deepened, you and Esta led a small retinue. Morcant's trusted captains, Marceline's loyal novices, and Guardian of Inquiry in black robes. Each bore a single relic's emblem, rose, bee, or chalice, woven into their cloaks as a sign of unity. The road to St. Lys wound through mist-laden woodlands and over moonlit moors. Wolves howled at the horizon, yet your band pressed on, lanterns bobbing like guardians in the gloom. At a secluded ford, you paused to test the vigilance of your escorts. Guardian of Inquiry held the parchment beneath torchlight, his quill staff probing for hidden wards. It is genuine, he said, and stamped with Valmont's secret sigil. Esta frowned. Who in the Curia would conspire with Valmont? Only someone with ambitions to use the bloodline for their own power. Confrontation at St. Lys. Under a sky crowded with stars, the Abbey of St. Ly emerged, a solemn fortress of ivory stone flickering with vigil fires. Across its courtyard, sentries on horseback turned their lanterns toward your approach. Guardian of Inquiry rode forward, staff raised in salute. Inside the high hall, candles burned around a polished table where 5 Curia emissaries sat in cassocks trimmed with silver quills. Their eyes widened when you and Morcant entered, relics held aloft. I bring evidence of a conspiracy, Guardian of Inquiry announced. He laid the stolen parchment before the emissaries. Signed by House Valmont and designed to incite rebellion against our sacred covenant. One emissary, the Prior of Silver Seals, leaned forward. If true, this is treason of the gravest kind, against both church and bloodline. You stepped into the candlelight. Our covenant binds church and lineage in unity. This plot threatens to sunder both. We demand swift justice. Murmurs rustled around the hall. The Prior of Silver Seals gestured to 2 guards. Seal these conspirators' names in our archives and summon them for trial. A secret preparation. That night, as the emissaries deliberated, you and your allies convened in a hidden chamber beneath the Abbey. Morcant sharpened axes by lantern's glow. Marceline whispered prayers of protection. Guardian of Inquiry pored over the parchment's margins, seeking the name of the traitor. Esta produced a second fragment, a scrap of crimson cloth embroidered with a raven's wing. They left this at St. Cassia, she said, the same mark as the parchment. Your heart thundered. Valmont's banner and the Inquisition's secret colluding to twist our bloodline's power for their own ends. Marceline placed a hand on your shoulder. We must unmask this traitor before the trial. Let no shadow hide beneath hood or cassock. The next move. At dawn, the Curia emissaries summoned witnesses. But you and Morcant slipped into the archives to search for clues. Between volumes of crimson-bound bulls and golden chalice tomes, you found a ledger hidden behind a false panel, entries detailing bribes paid to a Vatican official known only as the Raven. As the abbey bells tolled morning prayers, you clutched the ledger's edge. The traitor was within the Curia's own ranks, someone with access to both church secrets and Valmont's ambitions. You emerged from the archives into the Great Hall, parchment in hand. "I have the name," you announced, voice clear. Candlelight flickered across shocked faces. The Council of Sanctified Blood would convene again, this time to root out the Raven, restore faith, and secure the Merovingian legacy against those who sought to burn it. And as you looked at your allies, the chieftain, the monk, the sister, the acolyte, you knew the final chapters of this saga had begun. The bloodline had survived exile and trial. Now it would survive treachery too. Mist-swept dawn found the Council of Sanctified Blood assembled once more in the Great Hall of Ravenshore. 5 rows of scarlet-robed guardians faced the dais, clergy with chalice emblems, Merovingian heirs bearing rose and bee sigils, and Clan Morcant's veterans in leather and mail. At the center stood you, holding the secret ledger, proof of the Raven's betrayal. The oak doors swung open, and Abbot Verratti entered, flanked by the Prior of Silver Seals and Brother Alaric, who bore the stolen parchment in crimson cloth. Murmurs rippled through the assembly as the ledger was placed upon the polished oak dais. The prior cleared his throat. "By our covenant, every oath-breaker must face trial." His gaze met yours. "Heir, present your evidence." You unrolled the ledger. Each entry detailed clandestine payments from House Valmont's agents to a Vatican official codenamed Corvus, the Raven. Line after line, sums of gold, secret missives, orders to inflame dissent within the council. This is proof that Corvus intended to shatter our unity, to cast the church and Merovingian line into conflict, you declared, voice echoing off stone walls. A hush fell. Then Sister Marceline stepped forward, producing the bee sigil's twin, a silver bee pendant etched with the same ledger entries in microscript. "We recovered this at St. Lys," she said. "It confirms Corvus's seal." She laid it atop the ledger. In the torchlight, the microscript gleamed like a constellation. From the back of the hall, a figure rose. Dom Gregory, the church's archivist and Seleucia's former envoy. His cassock bore no marks of punishment, but his eyes flickered with unease. I do not recognize this evidence," he stammered. "Perhaps there is—" Brother Alaric's gauntleted hand snapped the ledger shut. "Silence! Either you serve the covenant, or you stand exposed as Corvus." His dagger gleamed. Dom Gregory paled. He sputtered, "This is slander." Before he could protest further, Morcant's captain, Dargan of the Western Isles, strode from the front row. He brandished the raven wing cloth. "I found this at St. Cassia's chapel, embroidered with Corvus's personal crest. It dripped with the same blood as Brunehilda's comb trial. There is no mistake." Gregory's face crumpled. I was coerced by promises, by fear. The Raven threatened to accuse me of heresy if I refused. He said our line's power must burn the Curia's lies to forge a stronger church." His shoulders shook. It was madness. The Prior of Silver Seals nodded gravely. "Under our law, a confession spares one from the scourge, but not from justice." He pressed a small, silver chalice stamp into hot wax on a witness scroll. "Dom Gregory, you are stripped of office and bound to serve penance at the crypt of St. Lee for 10 years. Let your chains teach you humility." A collective exhale filled the hall. Gregory sank to his knees, head bowed. Brother Alaric seized the ledger and cloth, securing them in iron-bound chests carried by novices. The threat of division had been neutralized, now to reinforce the covenant. You stepped forward, forward, addressing both clergy and clansmen. "The Raven is unmasked, but the betrayal runs deeper. Valmont's ambitions and those within the Curia converged in cowardice. Our unity must be renewed not only by trial, but by action." The prior nodded. "Agreed. At first light, we will dispatch emissaries to Valmont's remaining houses, demanding they renounce all ties to Corvus. The church will publish the ledger's redacted truth, so no lie goes unchallenged." Chieftain Morcant rumbled his agreement. "And Clan Morcant will stand ready to escort any who still honor the true line, bringing both crown and chalice to heel." The assembly rose in unified salute. You raised the Charter of Sovereignty, sealed now with the embossed seal of Ethelred, and spoke the final words of the morning's oath. By blade and by quill, by rose and by bee, we banish the raven and set unity free. Let church and crown guard this bloodline's trust, bound in our hearts in mercy and just. A single trumpet blast from the courtyard summoned all to witness the reaffirmation. As you marched out, relics secure, you felt the weight of history settle comfortably on your shoulders. The trial had tested faith and loyalty, and the council had emerged unbroken. Ahead, the path diverged once more. Diplomatic missions to Valmont's shattered houses, and the church's public reckoning with Corvus's treachery. But that was for tomorrow. Today, Ravenshore's bells tolled in victory, a testament that even the darkest betrayal could not extinguish the honeyed blood's promise of unity and renewal. Mist-veiled dawn found your small envoy winding through the narrow roads of Valmont's hinterland. At your side rode Chieftain Morcant, axe sheathed and banner lowered in peace, while Sister Marceline and Brother Alaric bore the Charter of Sovereignty, its seals gleaming in the morning light. Behind you, a cadre of council guards and church emissaries followed, each bearing symbols of rose, bee, and chalice, stitched on their cloaks. One, the first house, Valmont-sur-Lys. The manor of Valmont-sur-Lys sprawled on a gentle hill overlooking vineyards. Its stones were weathered, but banners still flew blank where once the raven had perched. As you approached the courtyard, the manor's steward, a gaunt woman named Isolde, emerged, flanked by crossbowmen. Marceline stepped forward, voice firm yet courteous. Steward Isolde, the Council of Sanctified Blood demands renunciation of House Valmont's ties to Corvus's conspiracy. This charter guarantees your autonomy under church and crown, yet forbids oath to treachery. Isolde's gaze flickered to the charter. She bowed stiffly. My lord vanished after Treville, and I swore only to protect these lands. I never consented to Corvus's plots. She reached into her breast and produced a folded parchment. Corvus's final missive, promising power in exchange for betrayal. She handed it over. My loyalty remains to the true heir. You accepted the letter. Then sign the renunciation accord, you said, presenting a fresh scroll, and swear by rose, bee, and chalice that Valmont-sur-Lys will stand with Ravenshore. Isolde dipped her quill in rose-scented ink, signed the accord, and pressed the charter's seal of Ethelred alongside her own. Crossbowmen lowered their weapons, and a cheer rose from gathered villagers who had watched in silence. 2. The Chapel of Broken Vows. Your entourage rode on to a forgotten chapel by a marsh where a second Valmont branch had sheltered. Its roof sagged, fishermen's nets and overturned pews lay scattered. At the altar, a priest knight named Roland knelt in prayer, the crimson sigil of the comb braided into his surcoat. Roland rose as you entered, sword hilt in hand. I await your judgment, heir, he said. I took the beast sigil in irony, not faith. You laid Brunhilde's comb upon the altar. Legend says the comb brings mercy. Offer your blade in service of that mercy. Roland sheathed his sword and touched the comb, swearing his oath. By mercy I bind my blade to the covenant. On the altar's stone, the comb's garnet flashed, sealing his vow. Public reckoning at St. Lys. That afternoon, your party returned to St. Lys for the church's public hearing. Abbot Verratti presided, clergy filling every pew, and common folk gathered outside to witness the judgment of Corvus's agents. Inside the high nave, the ledger and proofs lay open on a marble lectern. One by one, accused officials, now stripped of vestments and titles, stood to confess or face canonical trial. Their names echoed through vaulted aisles. Canon Belric, Auditor Renaud, and even Dom Gregory, now returned in humility. Each renounced their treachery before the cross. Outside, belfry drums announced each confession, and peasants wept with relief. The raven's name became a cautionary tale. The unity you forged stood witness that even corruption could be cleansed by truth. The Feast of Rose and Bee. At dusk, Ravenshore's courtyard transformed into a banquet hall. Tables groaned with honey-glazed meats, rosewater pastries, and golden chalice cups raised in toast. Clan Morcant's pipers played alongside church choristers. Novices danced amid lantern-lit trellises. You stood before the crowd, lock, comb, and tear crucible displayed on a draped altar. Tonight, you proclaimed, we celebrate not a king's coronation, but a covenant of all heirs, clergy, clans, and commons alike. We have faced exile, betrayal, and trial. Yet Rose and Bee have guided our blood and Chalice our faith. The crowd cheered, voices rising like a tide. Marceline raised her lantern. Its flame flickered in the wind, casting rose-gold light on every face. 5. A new dawn. As midnight's bells tolled, you slipped away with Esta to the sacred reliquary beneath the chapter house. There you placed the 3 relics together. The comb's mercy, the lock's resolve, and the crucible's sorrow. The reliquary's iron doors closed with a whisper, sealing the tokens in their eternal vigil. Above, the abbey's watchtower bells pealed in triumph. You and Esta climbed the winding path to the ramparts, gazing out at lands now pledged in unity. Farms, villages, and chapels, all bore banners woven with rose, bee, and chalice, symbols of a living covenant. "Do you feel it?" Esta asked, voice soft. "The promise in the air." You nodded, breath catching at the expanse before you. Roads untwisted, rivers unbarred, futures reclaimed. "This lineage," you said quietly, "will endure not by birthright alone, but by every vow kept in mercy and truth." A flock of ravens cried overhead, soaring across the silver moon. But they flew not as harbingers of doom, but as witnesses to a legacy reborn, Rose and Bee forever in flight, guided by the honeyed blood of those who dared to keep faith. Mist-shrouded morning found Ravenshore bathed in golden light, the last echoes of the feast's revelry fading into memory. But a new purpose stirred, forging the future from the covenant you had wrought. A council reborn. In the great hall, the council of sanctified blood gathered one final time. 5 years' terms were set, each member chosen for both lineage and wisdom. Sister Marceline as guardian of mercy, Brother Alaric as warden of resolve, Esta as keeper of loyalty, Chieftain Morcant as marshal of unity, and you, heir of the honeyed blood, as patriarch of the covenant. Around the dais, banners of rose, bee, and chalice hung in stained glass panels, refracting dawn into prisms of living color. You opened the session with a vow. "We will govern not by decree alone, but by service. Let every petition, whether from pauper or prince, be heard beneath these arches. Let mercy temper judgment, and truth guard our bond." The assembled bowed, and the charter of sovereignty was lifted high, its seals shining anew. The new pilgrimage. From that day, the 3 relics were freed from their reliquary vigil. The comb, lock, and crucible would tour the realm on a triennial pilgrimage of blood and faith. Towns once scorned by Valmont's shadow would now host these tokens of unity, reminding all that lineage and belief can heal old wounds. You dispatched emissaries to Ardennes, Loire, and Provence, guarded by Morcant's veterans and accompanied by Helvig's scholars, so each region might renew its allegiance under open sky. In every holdfast the pilgrimage paused, crowds wept and rejoiced in equal measure, and old enemies laid down arms to touch the relics in peace, healing the breach. Yet even the strongest covenants require tending. You journeyed personally to the frontier of the Eastern Marches, where a rival dynasty eyed the charter's power with suspicion. There, beneath a battered fortress gate, you met with Prince Alaric of Patron, a man whose family line claimed descent from a branch long thought lost. Over honeyed wine and rose-scented bread, you shared the story of the trials, the fallen Rose Tower, the Druid's Gorge, the sunken chapel, and the unmasking of the Raven. You presented the pilgrimage's first bead of silver, engraved with all 3 relic symbols, as a token of your trust. Moved by your candor, Prince Alaric knelt and swore the Eastern Marches into the covenant. The legacy secure. Returning to Ravenshore, you oversaw the founding of the Schola Merovingia, a school of both spiritual and martial arts, teaching the history, heraldry, and verses of your lineage. Young heirs learned to bear the comb's mercy, master the lock's discipline, and honor the crucible's compassion. Monks cataloged every whisper of prophecy, every fragment of legend, ensuring no book went unread. At sunset, you climbed the ramparts one last time. Below, fields of roses bloomed in neat rows, bees hummed in wooden hives, distant church bells tolled in harmony. In your satchel lay a fresh map, no longer the map of Sibyllus, but the Atlas of Accord, charting every territory pledged to the covenant. You released it to the wind. It drifted away, carried by a breeze scented of lavender and pine. As it floated toward destiny, you felt the live pulse of your bloodline in the breeze, The path you had walked, for secret abbey to diplomatic halls, had forged a legacy stronger than any crown. Behind you, the sanctum's arches stood open, inviting a new generation to step forward, to claim their trials and to weave their vows into the living tapestry of rose, bee, and chalice. And as the last light faded, you knew the honeyed blood would flow on, unbroken, united, and wise, guiding the Merovingian line into an age of mercy, faith, and enduring unity.